welcome everybody. We have Nexford University's first LinkedIn Live. My name is Jennifer Bangoura. I'm here with our Global Grid mentor, Raymond Victorino, one of our wonderful mentors. We're going to be getting started shortly. Raymond joined us a couple weeks ago for our first ever mentorship session on positioning yourself for your next job promotion. We took the full time for his incredible presentation. We have the recording in this event if you want to check it out. And we had really great questions come in from our guests. So we wanted to make time to address those for the Q&A, which we are going to do just shortly. So we'll give it a few more moments. We've got the room filling up. I see people joining in. Welcome and thank you. My name is Jennifer Bangoura and I'm here with Raymond. We're going to go ahead and dive in and start with some of these questions. So Raymond, first off, how are you doing? How are things going?
Hi, Jennifer. Good morning to you. By the way, you look good today, as always. Well, I'm really happy to be here. Coming from the last webinar, I know that we owe our participants the answers to their questions, and this is a good time. So I'm really excited for today.
Yeah. And
hello, everyone.
So greetings to everybody. If you want to let us know where you're joining in from in the chat, we can check that out afterwards and during. But I went through these questions beforehand, and we had over 150 people join our last session, and from entry to mid-level to senior, level, wherever folks are finding themselves in their career, I have heard these questions that we have that we're going to go through for our Q&A today. So without further ado, we'll hop in. If you're just joining, welcome. We are doing a Q&A follow-up to Raymond Victorino's first mentorship session on positioning yourself for your next job promotion. So our first question was, the context is, I have a really big challenge with the structure of the organization I work for. They see my inputs and recognize the results I bring to the table. I've gone ahead to request a promotion with facts and figures to back me up. I worked for it and I deserve it and I'm waiting for it, but it looks as if the management is unable to move forward because of a poor structure, internal structure. So what should I do?
All right. I think that's a very good question, Jennifer. First of all, I think we don't have any information as to what the response of the boss was to the question. I think it's a very critical information to consider in making your next career move. Another thing would be he or she talked about poor structure. And when we talk about poor structure, it's kind of vague. It could be that the company is actually downsizing, or perhaps it's a very lean organization that the person could not move up unless his boss leaves the company, is transferred to another department, or maybe is promoted. But to answer the question, there are two things. Of course, number one, as I advise to you, you have to have a timeline for your career. And if you have a timeline, there are two things. First, can you still wait for the answers to actually be communicated to you? Specific answers, like if you're really eligible for promotion and what the timeline will be. So if you are willing to wait, then my advice is, just go ahead and continue doing what you do, continue developing yourself, keep adding value, take action, and make a follow through with your boss. But if not, of course, you always have the option to explore other opportunities in other companies that which might offer you a good structure where your growth may be accommodated.
That's great. Thank you so much. So if you can be patient, but also, make sure that you're putting the steps in place to get the information you need. So thank you, Richard, for that question, who asked it.
Thank you, Richard.
So the next question we had, and we often hear that people don't leave companies, they leave managers. So this next one definitely taps into that. So how do you handle a line supervisor who has bossy behavior? And this is from John.
All right. Thank you so much for that question. But it sounds it could fall in another topic, no? But for the purposes of responding to that question, first of all, we have different interpretations as to what a bossy supervisor is. So it could mean that the person is or the person keeps on giving you responsibilities that are not supposed to be yours, or probably it's about his or her demeanor. But then again, my advice, if you have a bossy supervisor, and you feel that you're not, comfortable working with him or her, always, take that initiative to engage that person in a conversation. I don't find anything wrong, expressing your feelings as
Mhm.
long as you focus on the facts. You have to be objective as to why you think that your supervisor is being bossy to you. And
Mhm.
a lot of us would fear that it might go against us, or maybe it would not turn into our favor when we confront our issues with our supervisor. But a lot
Mhm.
of times I've observed that it actually translates into a better working relationship. That's
Mhm.
the most common outcome of confronting your boss, in of course in a good manner, in a manner that you have all those positive scripting and not judging your boss, but merely clarifying if
Right.
why he or she is exhibiting that kind of behavior. So yeah, that's my advice. Talk to your supervisor, confront your problem, and settle your issues with him or her.
Mhm. Would you recommend somebody outlining this in an email first, or do you think it's better to have an in-person or virtual if they're still virtual? What do you think?
Of course, an in-person or virtual
Yeah.
would be best. I also
Okay.
discourage you from spreading gossips or rumors
Uh,
about your boss being bossy. It wouldn't help.
right.
So it's better for relationships to actually deal with these two people dealing with each other um
Hmm.
upfront, rather than trying to get allies from different departments
Yeah.
until such time that it goes out of control. So yeah.
And I think it's interesting what you're saying too, in the context of positioning yourself for the next promotion. This kind of ties into that first question of if you're going around spreading, even conversations that you feel are getting something off your chest, uh, is that positioning you in the best light by saying, I have a bossy boss? Um, and so, thinking of how your reputation is shaped by the conversations that you're having with colleagues as well.
Yeah, because Jennifer, for all you know, your boss, for example, giving you responsibilities, more responsibilities than you ought to have. Maybe
Hmm.
he or she has plans of actually exposing you to the next
Mm.
level role, but he or she just couldn't or have not expressed it yet. So it's better to clarify. If your boss has good intentions by doing that, then by all means accept if you can, because that's also that will help you in your development.
That's great. Um, okay, so the next one, and this sort of, so Mansuru asked this one. What is the best advice for someone who wants to change a career path or trajectory?
All right. Well, number one, my advice is you have to know what you really want. You cannot
Mm.
just venture into something that you are unsure of. No, and I think some people would say that how would I find out if I have not experienced it myself? So that's partly true. But there are always people whom you can get information. For example, to ask about the role, how is it like, how does their day look like, so that you can have a clearer perspective, and you can come up with a more informed decision. But my advice, I think I've shared this in the previous webinar. The best time to really shift careers would be at the early stages of your career life, because if you are already at the middle stage, you are already a manager, for example, you want to shift careers, it would be very challenging, because there's not much companies right now who will offer you a different role of the same level. So some people would take a step back, one step back, two steps forward. They would accept a lower level role just so they can have that experience for that particular other career that they're looking for. Um, but really, the best time to explore another career option would be internally within your company. So some companies would have programs like career lattice or cross posting where you can be immersed to another function that you don't have any experience in. At the same time, you can also take on volunteering roles in projects that will allow you to work with, for example, if you're in sales, it allows you to work with marketing folks in the company. So there are a lot of opportunities within your organization. So I suggest that you try to check it first before deciding to move out and explore a different career in another company.
That's a great point. And actually, I was talking with a Nexford learner earlier this week who asked me the same question. And I said, how can you look at some of the Nexford courses that you're already enrolled in and map to this new career path? And absolutely, looking internally is such an important place to start. I think a lot of people reach this point where they say, I need to change careers and I have to do it at a different company. But it can be, not always, but it can be easier when you look within first, and thinking how you can maybe explore new education offerings that are going to help get you there, so that yes, like oftentimes you are taking that step back potentially or a lateral move, but keeping your eye on the longer term of like where that pivot can take you. This is great. Okay, our
Yeah.
next question.
Yeah. Sorry, Jennifer, just to add. So for example, you're taking an MBA in Nexford University, and you are being trained. Nexford is equipping you for these skills in your MBA program. So my suggestion is that you try to look for opportunities in your current company where you can actually apply those, because that will help you in your transition.
That's great. Thank you. So let's see. Our next question is it actually, okay, so we have two questions that are around office politics, so I'll combine them into one here. Is it possible to actually stay away from office politics? I believe you are already engaged in it the moment you sign in, and more so when you want to influence in one way or the other. And you brought this up in your last webinar around avoiding office politics, and just to be emotionally aware about who you're engaging with and around what topics. So would love to hear more. I guess people wanted to hear more about how to navigate that.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. I remember mentioning that in my webinar. So office or workplace politics can be described as the manifestation of the power dynamics in an organization. However, I think I failed to delineate or differentiate the kinds of office politics that exist. There are actually two kinds: positive office politics and negative office politics. So positive office politics could mean giving appreciation or recognition to another person in the company, or probably it could mean creating or presenting a corporate image of yourself. While negative office politics could be, backstabbing or probably blackmailing a colleague or spreading rumors or gossips. So what I was really talking about is for you to stay away from negative office politics. So I guess in summary, your loyalty shouldn't be with personalities in the organization. Your loyalty should always be with the company values and principles.
That's great. So just people being aware and taking the time to like reflect on directions of conversations and using your judgment on, is this something that I want to have associated with my professional brand when you're talking with people? And I think it's definitely an art of learning how to redirect some of those conversations, is what I'm hearing you say. And if somebody starts laying into that bossy boss and then thinking like, do I want this person to repeat to somebody else, the conversation that we've had. So just being, sensitive to that. That's great advice. So let's see. Oh, this is a good one from Kundi. What advice would you give someone who is currently taking more responsibilities at her place of work because the company is reducing staff in the department and the job load is getting overwhelming, but their manager has said there's no way the company is adding more staff now. So in the context that they're providing is a department with 5 employees before, now only has 1 doing everything. And I think during COVID, a lot of people have felt this pressure with either the Great Resignation or layoffs happening. And how do you, 1, take care of yourself, but 2, actually make sure that your manager or team is seeing the extra load that you're taking on?
Yeah, actually, that's the reality, as you said, Jennifer, in this time of pandemic, especially for companies who are merely surviving. They're in the industries that are not really performing well. So, well, first of all, I think more than a promotion concern, this is an emotional, physical, and mental, health issue. So you have to evaluate if it is still healthy for you to take on those responsibilities. I don't see anything wrong if you express to your boss that you feel overwhelmed. Maybe your boss has other, not necessarily in your department, but might have other resources that he or she can tap to help you, right? But if you feel that you can still take on the responsibilities and without compromising your overall well-being, then by all means accept it. you know um I think there are a lot of opportunities for you assuming responsibilities of other folks that who left the organization, and at the end of the day it will redound to your benefit. It will add up to your experience, to your leadership, etc. But of course, at the same time, you have to manage the expectations of your boss, because a job that is performed by 5 employees previously, the outcome might be different, especially if it's being done by just a single person. So that there has to be an alignment of expectations, and seek help. Seek help. But if it's already beyond your control, that's really the situation in the company, and the company couldn't do any more about it, then probably you have to rethink of your other options aside from your current company.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it sounds too like you need to, I love what you said about managing expectations and maybe being clear of like, here's what my job description is, here's what I'm doing now, and the extra work I've taken on, and prioritizing what you realistically can do with the time that you have and are able to commit to that work, and making sure that your manager and team is aware of it. So that's great advice. Thank you, Raymond. And so next we have, how valuable is an MBA when it comes to negotiating promotions and pay raises?
All right. Well, to be honest, my own personal view of that, whether or not you are leveraging MBA for a promotion or a pay increase, an MBA is always valuable because it is a form of investment that you do for yourself. So, when you take an MBA, like for example, in my case, my undergraduate course does not have anything to do with HR. I was a marketing graduate. So I decided to pursue a master's degree in HR because I'd like to equip myself also with the theoretical foundations of HR and to add credibility to myself as an HR practitioner. Of course, I'm not underestimating the value also of the actual experience that you gained over the years. However, I think more than the title, an MBA is valuable because it enables you to acquire the skills and knowledge that you need in order um, to help you move to the next level. And the benefit would be better if you're able to apply all this knowledge and skills that you got from your MBA back to your job.
I love that. Thank you. And so it's too, it's you're talking about understanding, having the theory and the practice and that experiential nature of it, and also being able to articulate the value to your employer. And so really thinking critically of like, when you look at your coursework and the projects that you did, how can you connect the dots for somebody to, the value of your MBA, which is great. So thank you. And what are some ways you can stand out if you're in a competitive role or on a large team? I think a lot of people can feel like, does anyone see me? Are you noticing the work that I'm doing? So I'd love to know, and you've worked in some really prestigious HR teams at prestigious companies. So you've seen this a lot, I'm sure, of people feeling like, does anyone see the contributions that I'm making? So what have you seen be successful for people in that space or situation?
Yeah, so my advice really is, number one is to find out what the specific competencies your company is looking for. Because for every company, there are specific set of competencies that they believe will take the company to the next level through its support. So once you figure that out, then you exhaust all means that you can, as much as possible, and try to impact the four areas that that I mentioned in the webinar. So the perception of people about you, your visibility, your influence, and your impact. So you have to be able to display those competencies and make sure that all of these four are actually working together to help you achieve your goals.
That's great. And again, I would recommend everyone going back to listen to your webinar from before, because the 9 eyes that you shared really, like, no matter where someone finds them in their career, entry, mid, senior level, I think they have something that they could take away for how to have influence in their work. And so thank you very much for that. And let's see. Our last question is, and with that, I've seen that some have come up in our LinkedIn Live, so I'll see if we are able to, if we have some time to address those. What are the most important skills to reach in, to get into that senior level, those senior positions at work?
All right. Based on my own experience, especially for big multinational companies. Hello. Yes. Okay. So based on my experience, for most multinational companies, they actually segment their skills and competencies into two. One would be the technical or the hard skills, and then the other one would be the leadership skills. So of course, if you're vying for a more senior role, management role, then you have to do well in the leadership skills aspect. So just to answer that question, there is no one size fits all competencies for every company. They might have some similarities, but other leadership competencies might be different from the other. However, what I can think of right now is, of course, number one, people development and people engagement skills. So you have to be able to groom the next, set of leaders that can replace you, and to continuously engage the people that are reporting to you. And when I say engagement, it's just not about HR, creating this engagement activities or events, but really it is, in a deeper sense, it is the primary role of our line leaders to engage people on a daily basis. Another thing could be, of course, effective communication. So whatever level you are in the organization, effective communication is significant. Especially if you are in a leadership role, you have to be able to effectively communicate and articulate the strategies of the organization, and influence the people to actually join you and help you in taking the organization to the direction that it is heading. Another possible competency as a leader, of course, is business and financial acumen. So it is very important because as you move up the ladder, or even maybe if you are in the lower ranks, you have to be able to know how the company makes and loses money. So you have to be able to identify what are the factors that actually influence the outcome of the company. So it's very important, like especially if you are in a support functional role like HR, because if you are in HR, for example, um, your being a good HR actually ends the moment that the only thing that you know is about HR. So you have to speak the language of the business. So another thing could be strategic thinking. So you have to be able to think long term. All right, you have to have this perspective where you can help the company in coming up with strategies, projects, or initiatives that can help the company achieve probably its goals in 3 to 5 years. So right now, those are the things that I can think of. But of course, again, it depends on in every organization.
That sounds, the list is long, but I think too, what I get excited about with our Nexford offerings is our competency-based curriculum and skills-based nature of our courses. So everything that you've highlighted here, if if folks look at the courses, certificates, and degrees that we have, you can draw out these specific competencies. And I think it's a healthy exercise, submitting this question of like, what skills do I need to get to that next level or into senior roles, and really stepping back and thinking critically, where do I have real strengths and where do I have gaps? And what you've mentioned consistently throughout is having open lines of communication with your manager, with your boss, with your colleagues at large. And I think it can be a healthy exercise to ask people, like, here is where I think I am now. Here's where I want to be, and here's what I understand my skills and strengths to be, and here's where I have some growth areas. And then getting insight and feedback from people to see, like, is that the reality that you perceive? Is self-awareness, making sure that others are perceiving you the way that you perceive yourself. And then once you identify those growth areas, you're able to, we all now have to be lifelong learners to stay competitive, no matter, and just to stay, feeling like competent and confident in our ability to execute in our roles. So yeah, that's just something I wanted to add on. Let's see. So the chat here is, we've had a lot of folks add in some nice contributions on our LinkedIn Live itself. So I'm just taking a scan. Someone brought up, leveraging transferable skills when you're changing careers. And I think you touched on that with bringing up doing informational interviews internally, but also identifying people externally who maybe have the career or role that you're interested in. So that was actually someone named Raymond as well, asked that. And otherwise, I think we've covered most of the questions here. So Raymond, I don't know if you have any closing remarks or some things that you wanted to share, but this has been a really wonderful, PS or addition to your great webinar. So thank you for making the time for this Q&A.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Jennifer, and Nexford University for organizing this Q&A. Of course, we owe this to the people. And if you have other questions, you can send me a direct message in LinkedIn, and then I'll try to respond to them as much as I can, given my limited time. But I'll do my best. However I can help you guys. So thank you for attending our short Q&A session, and I hope you were enlightened and you learned something from this session. Thank you.
So we'll be wrapping up. Thanks again to everyone for joining. This is Nexford University's, it's the Global Grid, and we have one of our mentors here, Raymond. So I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. We'll see you next week. We have a session with Yemi Fashun, and who's going to be talking about emotional intelligence. So we hope we'll see you there. Have a great rest of your day and take care.